Sup, y'all? It's TwoSun Tuesday, and today I got a relatively new one, at least at the time of recording here. This is a TS376. Of course, this is the TS376-color because it has the lightning strike anno on there. They also have a standard gray one if that's not your thing. And I can certainly understand that because in order for them to get a really nice crisp look to that anno, makes the finish much more slick than a standard sandblast or bead blast finish would. But this is a Max Tkachuk design, of course, titanium handle and all that. Really nice long back spacer. Always appreciate that. Really long and thin pocket clip. Has a decent amount of flex to it, but still quite a bit of force on there. So not something that will end up falling out of your pocket. But that pocket clip is going to be just a little bit longer than some others. So if you were hoping to carry this thing super conspicuously, that might not quite do it for you. But fairly deep carry for a titanium milled pocket clip nonetheless. So here we go. We got the hardened steel insert in here, and it's interesting that they kind of had it raised a bit up like that. Kind of like how they end up doing their button locks here. How about if we go ahead and open the blade here? We got a fairly large sheep's foot blade. It does angle up. I think if it kept going straight, it might remind me a little bit of the Concept Convict. But that's just probably overall its sheep's foot nature to it. This guy is kind of nice in that the blade comes down quite a bit further than the handle there. And you can also sneak up if you so desire. For me, that finger choil doesn't quite work. There's something that I do need to kind of address with this one right up front. For one, a lot of people really like this design. I know Jared and Eve had been really happy with this thing. There's a couple of things about it that are kind of annoying, and it has nothing to do with the blade, everything to do with the handle here. Everything is sharp. We have a lot of really hard creased corners, so to speak. And they're not, you can't really feel a burr on them, but I really do think it would have helped to knock them down a little bit. First up, you can deploy this thing with the reverse flick. That works out super great. But when you go to close that, even though we do have a little bit of scalloping on the access bar or the the lock bar that we have a little bit of access to, but it is sharp and it takes quite a bit of effort to actually go ahead and close that. So it's a little uncomfortable to do that. Second up, if you are trying to deploy this thing, if you are trying to do it from this side with your thumb, kind of difficult. For one, you really do kind of want to hold on to the pocket clip a little bit. And that will cause some things to dig into you there, as well as that end of the finger choil there. Every time I deploy that with the thumb there, that hits me right on the crease of my thumb, and it's just really annoying. Beyond that, you have that little kind of circle thing for your finger there, and that also has that really nice pointy kind of thing going on there. Kind of detracts from it a little bit. So I'm not as super crazy gung-ho as some people are about it. But it certainly beats the pants off of the 357 that came out. Just because of the implementation of the pocket clip that TwoSun ended up doing there with that one single screw into the micarta and a very small little window at the very end of the knife that caused, I guess, even some of the pocket clips to fall off before they even got to consumers, because I've seen one or two return to White Mountain knives that just had them straight up missing out of the box. I took mine off because, it makes it a much more usable knife, but that's neither here nor there. So, yeah, we talked a little bit about that. I do like the crenellations, though, and kind of this back thing with the pocket clip also ends up being just a little bit pointy if I'm holding it back there. It'll dig in pretty ferociously into the palm of the hand there. But it really depends. If you're holding it in a gorilla grip, then absolutely no problems, as it even extends past my particular hand here. But okay, so I wanted to cover that a little bit. Just there could have been a little bit more rounding of corners on here to make the handling experience quite a bit better. But we have basically some contoured stuff going on with the handle scales here. Not super curved. We have the straight and then the two angled facets going on there, but works out quite well. As far as how any of that stuff, besides the fact of the pointy nature of a whole bunch of sides on this thing, works out really well. And like I said earlier, I do like that the blade extends below where the handle is. That gives you a little bit more control over that heel of the blade without having to absolutely smudge up right behind that if you are doing a little bit more powerful but careful cuts with that. It ends up working out super well. Like I said earlier, it is difficult to attempt to open this thing due to being able to apply a lot of extra lock bar pressure there. The pocket clip doesn't ride on there, but it does curve away, so it's a little bit more cumbersome to actually get your fingers wrapped around there, as it's much further away than I would typically see. But that does make it really difficult to do a slow thumb rollout. If you're doing it right there where you would use it for a flicking, it's basically impossible. But you do get a little bit better leverage if you're up here in the tear drop. So, it's something you'll just have to get used to if you do end up carrying this with any amount of frequency. We still do, even on this one, have some micro milling going on the facets. Not the flat part, of course, but both of the facets there. And that does give you just a little slight bit of extra grip to it, so that's pretty good. Nice stonewash finish on the blade. D2 steel, as that's kind of what TwoSun has moved back into almost exclusively at this point, which is unfortunate. I really do hope that they end up branching out or something like that. This guy is a little bit weird in that it's got a blade stop pin for closed and one for open. It's not sharing the same duty on there. Still, both of them very thick. So it can put up with a lot of really heavy flicking open and close without kind of any problems going on there. And because of that whole nature there, the plunge grind is fairly darn gradual. I guess it does end pretty close to where the heel of that blade is. But it's still fairly gradual and down, so I really didn't have any troubles creating any kind of a smile past where that blade is. But I suppose your mileage may vary depending on how you end up sharpening and or reprofiling the blade, if that's something that you do. We got a little bit of skeletonization going on the inside here. So, with that being said, how about if I get into just a couple of statistics to help us out a little bit. It's got TwoSun standard blade stock thickness of 3.8 millimeters, 4.88 ounces here, or 138.5 grams. So it's definitely not a lightweight knife, but still, for the size of it, pretty darn good. We got 3.73 inches from basically the furthest point out on the handle here out to the tip. That'll be 94.8 millimeters for y'all metrically inclined. And relatively thin handles here at 0.51, or just a little bit thicker than a Spyderco PM2 at the flat to flat points. And then, of course, it contours on both sides. Excuse me. And that's 12.9 millimeters for the metric crew. So, yeah, got a good rundown of that. This is a very full-size knife. And pretty darn capable. Really nice lacy geometry. It does start out with a quite thick blade stock, but because it's nice and tall, it takes it a long time, and it takes its leisurely time getting down to that very thin edge there. So it ends up working out great. Most of my issues there is in a relaxed saber grip. That pocket clip does kind of dig into me a little bit. And then other pointy kind of nature things of the handle do bother me only during deployment. But that's about everything that I can think of there. We got T8 hardware all the way around, just like pretty much everything else. I do think, yeah, just like all the other TwoSuns out there, we do have T6 for the hardened lock bar insert, but unless you absolutely need to, you should pretty much just leave that there all the time. We do have a large lanyard loophole kind of thing here. It does go through that back spacer and is backed up down there, so really, really nice and solid to protect whatever kind of material you want to use for that. It's still not exactly my favorite look. I do kind of like when they do a little bit more of a channel or milling into the backspacer to do a more hidden lanyard thing, because it's really falling out of style. But, you know, for the people who really do appreciate it, at least it's there, so that's nice. Unlike being able to swap the clip over to the other side. But that's, like, TwoSun as a whole has, like, maybe 4 or 5 knives overall that can actually do that. So, alright, I should do some blade size comparisons and all that sort of stuff. This guy's pretty big. So, yeah, I will put him up against the Spyderco Medix 2 XL and the Spyderco PM2. There we go. This one looks a little bit higher just due to how that pocket clip rides up there, up front there. But, yeah, there we go. I will also pull out the Endura, because this is also a fairly large blade. So in case you're a little bit more familiar with that, there you go. Let's see, some Benchmans. We got the 940. Of course, that's going to be quite a bit larger there. And there's the bug out as well. As I've mentioned in the past, I do have a Griptilian full-size purchased, and it hasn't shipped from the Knife Center yet, but I have purchased some G10 scales for it to replace the whatever kind of plastic that they're ending up using these days. It has changed over the years. I do remember it being ABS plastic in the past, but I do think that has changed. And sure, here we go. There's the rat number 1. And it is just a little bit larger, so yeah, you can definitely see. That's a big-ass knife. But, there we go. Oh yeah, the other thing is, for me, it's a little uncomfortable on the clothes due to some sharp corners there as well. But, alrighty, that is basically everything that I wanted to cover here for the standard review. I'm going to go ahead and take a little bit closer look on the inside, so if you want to stick around, then we can do that. Otherwise, appreciate y'all for stopping by. So, let's go ahead and pop them open here. We got T8 hardware here. There's that first one, that's a clip. That, surprisingly, on this one, but it makes sense with the tip, doesn't use one of those Chicago screws to be able to get into it. Unlike these two guys here. There we go, and everything comes apart. So, yeah, we can see we do have a little bit of weight relieving going on the lock bar. Usually much easier to do over here on this side, and of course they have. So, yeah, a little bit more pockets going on there. We got their standard size bearings, which is actually fairly interesting, because most of the Max Tkachuk designs, including some of the much larger blades, end up using a very, very small pivot bearings going on there. So that's a little bit different, which, hey, you know, it's certainly not a bad thing. And of course, we have their standard bearing races here. And we get their D-shaped pivot here. This is, I think, one of the newer designs. Yes, it is. So this does have the D shape here on the show side rather than the lock bar side. That way, when you're putting it back together, you don't have to worry about where this pivot is actually oriented or orientated, I guess, if you're you're English. It just makes it much easier to slap these things back together after the fact, which is what I'm going to go ahead and do now. Yeah, we do have a little bit of a detent wrap going on there, so that's nice. I don't necessarily think it was the most required feature on this particular knife here, but certainly doesn't hurt anything, so there you go. Slap them back together. Cool, I didn't remove those Chicago screws. A lot of times I do like to, when I'm putting things back together, relieve the lock bar tension. A lot of times that will force a pivot through if it's just kind of on the fence there. Especially important if you're disassembling something with an access lock. Something about actually pulling back on this releases the tension from that pivot bar there. Not super useful for this particular takedown, but if you are dealing with something with a crossbar or access lock or whatnot, then yeah, that definitely helps for putting it back together. I suppose I should also mention, unless you absolutely know what you're doing and or like to deal with fiddly things, might not be in your best interest to disassemble any lock bar or crossbar knives, whether it comes from Benchmade or anybody else, including TwoSun, which has one released, and looks like Raihi has a design created for another one that also looks pretty interesting. Well, there we go. That is the TS376. I suppose your mileage may vary as far as how the little pointy facets on this thing might or might not affect your hand, but otherwise, a really great knife with quite a bit of knuckle clearance for getting closer down to a cutting surface or something like that. So, alrighty. As always, I appreciate y'all for watching, and have yourself a wonderful rest of your day. Subscribe.